Good morning. This is Mona, and this is my morning view. Today, Fall Edition 2025, October 28th. It is Tips Tuesday. Tips Tuesday. So I had a thought earlier this morning, and as usual, by the time I wanted to come out here, the thought was gone. Gone. Just grew wings, flew away. All right, so this is what I got to do. I'm going to put my arm extended here. See how long my hand can hold this thing for. All right. Tips Tuesday. So I had another thought that I had been pondering all morning long, and it's like, well, I haven't gotten through this thought fully yet, in my own life, so it's not. There's sometimes I come in and it's like, okay, you're coming to the journey with me, right? And so as I'm trudging through the trails, you're coming with me. And those are some journeys that, I feel comfortable bringing others along with me. There are other journeys that I need to get at least through a certain point before I can say, okay, yeah, I definitely know the way for this. I think about the Oregon Trail, and I think it was the Donner Party that took a different route. Somebody had said that they knew a shortcut, and so they took this different route, and they ended up running into all sorts of delays, problems, issues on their journey, which got them to a certain point late. And when they got there late, well, those that know their history, it didn't fare really awesomely for the Donner Party. And so I don't want to be that person to say, hey, I know a shortcut. Because shortcuts are rarely shortcuts. They rarely are. You take the shortcut and there's a traffic jam. You take a shortcut and the bridge is out. You take a shortcut and there's always, it makes it a little bit easier with Waze. But your GPS is not necessarily always accurate. So, in this journey of life, I don't want to sit there and say, hey, I know a shortcut on something that I haven't navigated through yet. And others, I'll tell you, hey, we're going on this journey together. Don't have all the answers, but, we're coming together. And those journeys are, I can't say that one is more difficult than the other. I can't even say that one is more spiritual than the other, So I was like, okay, I said all that to say I'm not going there today. I'm not going there today. And on top of it all, I ended up listening to a podcast this morning that just so happened to be on that subject after I had been talking to the Lord about it. And then here's this podcast, and that's like, I know I'm not doing it now, because I'm not going to sit there and talk after I've just watched a podcast over the same subject. I got to let that stir in a little, soak, steep, if you will. The podcast is Cup of Joe, and he's doing an impromptu. He calls it, he doesn't call it impromptu. I call mine impromptu. He calls it unscripted. His is unscripted. So yeah, I'm going to let the coffee steep a little in his French press, before I start sharing that subject matter, because it's just a journey that I'm going through right now. And it's not anything crazy. It's just, I'm just not ready to share that journey. All right. So with that, I'm going to go with, this Cup of Joe guy. Okay. you'll know you're in the right place. He's got a accent across the pond. I think he's Irish. So anyways, let's see. He was talking today on, I don't know if it was the same podcast or if it was a short or something that I had seen before I went to his podcast. And that was that in YouTube, social media stuff, you get caught up in the likes, right? You get caught up in the likes, and sometimes you forget your mission. It's not the words he said, but basically that's what he's saying. You get caught up in it, and you start doing the comparison game, and you're looking at, oh, look how many likes he's got, and then, man, I wish I had that many likes, or whatever, right? And I think he said that comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I was like, oh, yes it is. So what I'm going to talk about today is comparison, because that's not the podcast that I listened to. That was just a statement. He may have said it in the podcast, but it wasn't about the podcast. So, comparison. We are not to compare ourselves. And one of the things that can keep us in that idea that we are not to compare ourselves is that we are uniquely and wonderfully made. Uniquely and wonderfully made. Okay? Now, got to stretch out the arm a little bit more. We have our own fingerprints. Even twins, identical twins, have different fingerprints. Now, if you're not an expert, they all kind of look the same. Maybe different sizes, maybe swirling other ways. But there's a lot of fingerprints you sit there going, it looks the same as that fingerprint. But an expert would know. How someone becomes an expert at fingerprints, I don't know. I am amazed. Like, I can find counterfeit, but to find differing fingerprints that might look the same, one that belongs to one person, one that belongs to the other, that is truly a gift. So, and sometimes people walk in their giftings, right? They walk in their giftings, they get paid for their giftings, and other people, they don't get paid for their giftings because their giftings are of a different nature, but God still provides. So this comparison of, oh, they sing so wonderfully, they have a career at it, or they speak so wonderfully, they have a career over it, or, all these different things that we compare ourselves to. Oh, they're so beautiful and have such an amazing body. They get paid for it. I'm talking models. Don't go down that road. Talking models. Actresses. Some actresses are not, quote, beautiful, because you need actresses and actors that look like everyday people in order to be believable. If all you have is a bunch of beautiful people walking around acting, you probably are watching a soap opera and not. So okay, we're not going to talk about the soap operas. But it's not reality, put it that way. And people get caught up and compare themselves in that. Same thing with movies, same thing with at your job. There's somebody that's living really well, and you're like, oh man, to be that lucky, to have that skill, to whatever. Comparison. We're always comparing ourselves. If I could lose a little bit more weight, I don't want to look like so-and-so. I want to fit into the clothes that are in my closet. That's me, okay? But there's times when I see really fit people, and I'm like, man, I'd love to be able to look like that person. And they seem to not have to put in the effort that I would have to put in for that, because we're different people with different bodies and different body types and different metabolisms. That's why we can't compare. That's why we can't say, oh, why can't I have that? You know, because that's not how you were made. All right. Oh, it's starting to sound feisty there, like it was a feisty Friday, and it's not feisty Friday. So, comparison. You know, when you compare one gifting over another, you compare, I would say apples to oranges, okay? But they're both fruit. So sometimes the comparison can be similar. They're both fruit. Are your giftings producing fruit? Because when it comes down to it, the Holy Spirit's fruit is fruit. The fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit comes from the same tree, from the Holy Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit comes naturally. It doesn't come forced. It doesn't come, I'm going to squeeze out this apple. That's not what a tree says, okay? No, it just knows to produce what it is designed to produce. And it doesn't get jealous over the orange tree, okay? Or at least I don't think trees get jealous. But for the most part, I think apples are pretty happy at producing apples. Oranges are pretty happy at producing oranges. They're both fruit. So if you're a Christian and you're producing good fruit, that is what matters. Good fruit. But if you are so obsessed at producing something that you are not designed to produce, then what happens is your fruit is not as good. It's sour apples. Sour apples. Sour grapes. Have you ever bitten into an orange that's sour? Oh. You don't want to produce sour stuff. You want to produce sweet things. Now, yes, in the realm of fruit, there are times when sour apples are good. I love a good Granny Smith, okay? Not sure I like sour grapes. No. But for the most part, you know, you have your sour taste buds that, you know, sometimes you enjoy that pucker. Lemons, limes, those things that are supposed to be that way. And that's okay for them, because they can produce what God has designed them to produce. So sometimes you have people with different personalities that come out and they'll talk about things, and it's like, it's not your cup of tea. It's not your cup of tea or cup of joe. It's not your cup of tea. And so they're there for those people that they can reach. So I've had people tell me that, you know, I should stay in the kitchen. Those people have never tasted my cooking. And I should stick to the weather. That's why for years I did a weather report before I started these. It was more out of defiance, but I've gotten over that. So we're moving on. And I just tell you what season we're in. All right, so I go, you know, you get caught up in semantics. Not this individual. That was somebody who just totally thought that his way was right and no other way was right, and that's the way it is. But I've had other people sit there and go, you know, you have a really strange theology. And I think at the time, I was still trying to work things out in my brain, because I still wasn't real well. And so I was looking at working with a certain group of people, a certain demographic. And with that demographic, I was using language that they understood. And then Christians did not understand the language that I was using. And so they thought that I was using, you know, this this weird language that equaled to a strange theology. And it could look like that if you're not listening to what I'm actually saying, because what I'm actually saying is biblical. But I was using words that demographic could understand. Now, since then, I've moved out of that demographic, not really talking about that demographic, but we get caught up in semantics. And so when we get caught up in semantics, we think that one person is not, saying the right stuff. But it's really, who are you serving? Right? Who is it that God has placed in your life to serve? Because we're serving God. That's what we're serving. That's who we're serving, is God. But we serve human beings to serve God, because that is his most valuable asset, is human beings. Jesus paid the price for that. So we serve human beings, and different people are different. And they hear things differently. And they speak things differently. So you have to really understand what the message is through the semantics, the different words. So sometimes we compare ourselves into people that, we want to be like somebody. And other times we compare people to other people and we're like, oh, why aren't you like that? Why aren't you talking like that? Why aren't you acting like that? Why aren't you? And it's still comparison. So we can either compare ourselves in the sense that, sure wish sure wish I had it like you, sure wish I could be like you, sure wish I was you, to, man, I'm glad I'm not like you because you're off the rocker, you got a strange theology, you got whatever, and it's like, no, I just wasn't talking to you. My theology is the same. Jesus, born of a virgin, lived the sinless life, died on the cross, rose from the dead. We're to follow in his footsteps. We're to pick up his mantle. Just like Elisha did with Elijah. Greater things than these will you do. Okay? So it's the same theology. It's just sometimes the semantics are a little different. And then people get carried away about what other people are doing. People have, you are witnessing to one person, and maybe you're tilling the ground. Maybe you're watering. Maybe you're bringing in the harvest. But whatever job you're doing is not greater than the other. If you've got somebody who's always leading people to Christ, they're leading them in the sinner's prayer. By the way, the sinner's prayer is not necessarily the mandate of how you come to Christ, okay? Christ draws all people to him, and when they come, they bring what they know. And so they may not know the sinner's prayer, right? But if you have somebody to lead them in the sinner's prayer, that's awesome. That's awesome. I got leaves attacking me here. But not all of us lead people to Christ in the sinner's prayer. Sometimes we till the ground, around the plant, around the tree. We have to nurture the plant, and it's like sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, because you're not seeing the fruit of your labor. You're just laboring and laboring and laboring, and then others water. So you come in and you bring refreshment to people. And you might see a little spark of hope. But you're not the one that harvests. And then the harvester comes in, leads the person to the Lord, And then they think they got another jewel on their crown that others don't have. And it's like, that's not. Everybody had their part. Everybody had their part. And it was all important. So when you compare what you do to somebody else, that's not how God sees you. God sees you as unique and wonderfully made. God has a mission for you, and only you can carry that out. Now, there are some times when it says, okay, if you don't do it, God will find somebody else to do it. So how many opportunities have we missed not stepping in what God has for us because we're too busy chasing what somebody else is doing? Uh-oh, I'm sounding feisty again. This is Tips Tuesday. So the tip, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and there is no comparison. All right. That's all I have for you today. Thank you, Janice, for watching. Blessings, everybody. I will see you tomorrow for Wonderful Wednesday. Don't forget to hop over to YouTube, Mona E. Harrison. Different than my Facebook profile, Mona E. Harrison. Go over there. You'll find the subscribe button right around there. And you'll know you're in the right place when you see my white hair, my beautiful face, sometimes too close. I'm working on the length thing. It's going to be muscle strengthening for the arm. All right. This arm will be much stronger than this arm if I don't switch hands like I used to when I walked. All right. Blessings, everybody. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.